Welcome to the B2B CMO podcast, a show for marketing executives who are redefining what it means to be a strategic leader. I'm John Miller.
And I'm Sydney Sloan. Between us, we've led marketing orgs at companies like Marketo, which John founded, Demandbase, G2, and SalesLoft. For more marketing leadership resources, you can visit b2bcmoproject.com. And now, let's get into the show. Welcome, our B2B CMO community. Today, I'm so excited to be able to talk with our friend, introducing all of us to Wendy White, and really one of the sharpest marketing minds I know. She is currently the CMO at Daxko, where she leads marketing and partnerships for the platform that's powering every wellness journey. So it's a member management and operations platform that powers the fitness industry. Wendy has been a CMO for a number of companies on global span and leadership roles at places like Microsoft and Intel. And I can attest that she has seen the playbook from every single angle. Scrappy, hands-on, data-driven. I'm going to tell the story the very first time. Well, it might not have been the first time, but the first time Wendy and I got to spend quality time together. She had just joined Daxko. You were amalgamating a bunch of different companies with different systems, and you're like, I've got to get this data right, which I think put you like in a very favorable place for when AI came along. And so we're going to talk a lot about Wendy's journey in AI, her journey in leadership, and I'm just thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Sydney.
All right. So we start getting to know a little bit about you. So we will ask you, what's your personal story? Like, where'd you come from? Why'd you enter into marketing? Who is Wendy White?
I think I probably am going to give you the most unique story you have heard, which is
Exciting.
I got into marketing through doing propaganda development for the Army. And I'm going to guarantee you haven't heard that before. But I joined the Army 40 years ago this month. I enlisted. And so, think the traditional thing of what you expect, my camouflage uniform and my M16 rifle. I did all of that.
So to clarify, this is the U.S. Army.
This is the U.S. Army.
Okay.
Yeah, I had parents who had I'm the first person to go into college and to go into a professional career. My parents were both. My dad started off his career as a mechanic. My mom was a junior secretary, and they worked themselves up to being amazing entrepreneurs, but they had never had the college experience. And so when it came time for me to go to college, they had set no money aside. They weren't really financially prepared for it and really wanted me to stay at home and live in their basement and, commute 20 minutes to the University of Minnesota. And I'm an adventurous soul, and that sounded like the worst possible experience in life. So I enlisted, and I joined the Army into a role called psychological operations specialist, which was propaganda development. They sent me to language school in Monterey for a year. Then I went to the psychological operations school, which was part of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center. So I'm technically in special operations, or was in special operations. So, learned all about psychological preparation of the battlefield and audience analysis and all these things. That is essentially marketing. It's marketing, but you're marketing, to do things like disrupt the enemy, get civilians to move off the battlefield, create disruptions. And that's what it was. So dropping leaflets, putting out loudspeaker campaigns, designing radio campaigns, designing whisper campaigns, like all these things. So I learned how to do all that, went to college, went to Cal, became an Army officer, and stayed in for about 12 years doing psychological operations, but the last half of it in the reserves while I was working at Intel. But again, I guarantee no one said, oh, I went to the Army to learn how to do marketing, but I did.
That's awesome.
Fascinating. Can you think of a campaign that you were particularly proud of back then?
Well, that specialty is, rooted.
Or is it secret?
In weird stuff. But I can give you something that people might relate to. Do you guys remember when we captured, Noriega, for example, in the US Army captured Noriega? They surrounded his house with loudspeakers and blasted him with loudspeakers for 30 days. That was the psychological operations crew doing that. It wasn't my particular platoon doing it, but that kind of thing is the kind of thing you can think of when you think about these things. Yeah, insane stuff.
This has me really excited for later in the podcast when we start talking about AI and how, marketers can use AI. Because
Yeah.
obviously you didn't have AI as a tool available to you then, but imagine if you did.
I can imagine it actually, because one of the things that you learn, and went through military intelligence school as well. One thing you have to learn is how to sift through a lot of data to come up with the insights that allow you to plan that, and understanding that data. And back then we would do that all manually, and you get to be you get to develop those really good analytical skills that I think now we are all starting to rely on AI for. That actually makes it worrisome about our analytical skills atrophying because AI just does it so easily for us.
How did you decide to transition then from the military into technology and moving to Intel?
Well, I grew up in a environment where there was tech. Like even in the '80s, when I was a kid, my brother and I were probably the first people we knew to get a computer, like the original TRS-80. Remember that?
I had one of
Um,
those.
yes, for sure. I mean, like I think John, we're probably of an age and probably of the same, tech background and experience. The first like TRS-80 to the Apple IIe, like that whole experience. But my mother also worked at Control Data Corporation. I don't know if you guys remember that company, but it's a precursor to a lot of the big mainframe companies. And so I always had tech around me, and I knew I wanted to work in tech. When I graduated, my number one goal was to work at Microsoft. I thought that Microsoft was the best company, from like just everything they did was amazing to me. And my first job out of college was working at a little systems integrator. And that's how I kind of got into the whole tech career. And then I went and got an MBA, and from there got actually recruited to Intel, which if you squint is kind of like being at Microsoft, not really, but close enough.
So Wendy, a big part of the B2B CMO project is, recognizing that it's hard to be a modern CMO. There's challenges that we face, both because the things that used to work aren't working as well anymore. CEOs and CFOs and boards don't necessarily get it. And we have this AI disruption going on. So in your role as a CMO, like, how are you thinking about being a strategic CMO, navigating some of this, like these changes? What does it mean to be a successful CMO today?
I feel that so much when you say that, like it's hard being a CMO. I've always felt that way, but I always felt that way a little bit because, I think every CMO has a little bit of imposter syndrome because you cannot be great at every aspect of being a CMO, right? You can be fantastic at data, or you can be fantastic at operations, or you can just be deep into performance marketing and demand gen. But then there's also product marketing and positioning. There's brand and brand strategy. There's creative, right? You can't be good at everything. And yet you kind of have to, right? So and if you really are a CMO, you actually have to be a seat at the table executive on company strategy. Where do we place our bet as a company on our products, on our, our booking strategy, our EBITDA strategy? Like you have to know all of that. You have to be seat at the table of all those things, right? So the amount of pressure and stress on a CMO, because everybody has a point of view, everybody's a creative director, everybody, like it's the only job I think in a C-level suite where everybody else thinks they can comment on your work. Like I don't go tell the CFO how to organize his accounting. So everybody wants to tell me how to run marketing, right? Like it's the most interesting role at the executive table. So it is definitely, a challenging time because everything is changing so fast. So I try to really just root myself in the business strategy, our operating, principles, how I'm impacting revenue, how I'm impacting bookings, how I'm impacting by pipeline, make sure that I'm keeping those things front and center and always bringing a business discussion. But I freely admit, I have been there and seen it and done it all. So I'm also commenting on the company's customer success strategy, our sales organization and structure, right? Our software procurement strategy. Like I have a seat and a point of view about all of that. And I think that is what a modern CMO needs to do, is to be really deeply integrated into the overall market and business strategy of the company. Don't sit back and wait for it to be about like what's the next trade show.
100%. Like that was the number one finding of the research we did recently, which is the most successful CMOs are a business executive first, and
100%.
they understand with their peers. They're also getting, more, adept at speaking the language of the market, not just of marketing, which I think, you referred to, and changing how they're talking to, their fellow executives and the kind of metrics that they're using. It sounds like you're sort of doing some of those same strategies.
Yeah, I like my relationship with my CFO, for example, is it's about investment and return. And it's about, like, for example, EBITDA. I have a recurring meeting with him where I'm looking at the run rate of the costs of my business, how I'm bringing the run rate down, where I'm shifting, resources, where I'm shifting investments, what I expect that to do in terms of impact on, pipelines, bookings, EBITDA. Like that's a regular conversation. And if you're a CMO, you've got to be having those conversations with your CFO, because when it comes time for the next budget, they're drafting that budget and usually working with the CEO behind the scenes on their Rev 1 forecast. And I'm sorry, but it's hard to fight an uphill battle if they've come in with already a strategy around cutting marketing or increasing bookings, but not increasing marketing because they don't understand the correlation between those two. Then you're working from a negative position, trying to argue to reclaim your dollars back, or argue for more dollars versus them coming in with a model that makes sense out of the gate.
Yeah, it's the vicious circle if you're not establishing that credibility early on.
That's
How
correct. Yeah.
how are you handling the everybody has an opinion about marketing problem?
I will say I probably in my early years as a CMO got very defensive and frustrated. And now I think I have to take it with like um, humor and grace. And you just have to like actually make a joke about it. Say that, like, bring it forward as almost like oh, okay, like who's creative director today, and call your peers on it. Like that's what I do. I don't try to, call them out and challenge them. It's much more of using humor to diffuse that and to show them how crazy it is, right? And and kind of what I remind people is like, hey, look left and right. I'm the only person in this room that's got 30 years doing this job. So, we all have a point of view, but at some point, like the functional expert needs to decide, right? And so I think humor and grace, and then also making sure you're just lining up your relationships offline so that when you use that humor and grace, that people accept it and it doesn't feel like it's disruptive to like the executive team behavior and bonding.
That's actually a really interesting answer, because I would say the more common answer I hear is like, well, you actually listen and like, take their point of view to account, and like, like, yes, you're probably doing some of that, but I love the sort of humor and grace, lead. And I think that speaks to the relationships you're building.
There's that concept of the first team. Your first team is your peers, right? And I think that's true. You have to have a super tight relationship with each of the peer sets on your executive team, so that your agenda can be heard, that you're respected and your point of view is respected on things outside of marketing. Like you got to build that.
I agree, like, that the relationship with each one and what are your joint goals and how do you ensure your teams are aligned and supporting each other? And I always say it's in partnership, right? I hear sometimes people say marketing is in service too. And I'm like, no, we're not. We are in partnership. We have shared goals. We align our teams. And when that happens, it's just easier on everyone. But the spin is, you also are responsible for partnerships.
Yes.
Was that part of the job originally, or did you expand into that? Because when we think about ourselves as like market leaders and expanding our ecosystem through partners. I think that's just such a nice natural progression of the CMO role. So tell me how that happened for you.
Yeah, it really materialized during the interview process with the CEO, because they had partnerships stuck under the CTO, and they were treating it as a technology integration versus a go-to-market led strategy. So that emerged through that conversation, just based on some experience that I had, doing something similar to other companies. But when my first year here, I think I treated it as like a funny side gig, because I was so busy transforming marketing. What's really emerged for me in the last couple years is it's an equal role for me to my CMO role, because it's so strategic to how we grow. It's incredibly strategic to our brand being perceived as an open platform ecosystem, and our platform strategy, and being able to plug in integration and innovation from around the industry, making our product very core to our customers. So for me, I spend probably as much time on partnerships as I do on marketing, but that's only because I've hired really strong lieutenants on the marketing side, and have built up kind of a world-class leadership team that I can afford to do that.
I'm going to pivot a little bit to get us into the AI conversation, because you were one of the first. I recall we had one of our AI club meetings, and you're like, hold on a minute, I feel behind. And you spent the weekend building your own agents. And you're like, I just, and you pulled your person in, and like you were the next presenter, and you went from nothing to like leading in a month. And it was fantastic to see. And so as you think about AI as an equalizer, like we can all use AI to like manage channels and maybe share a few of the things that you've done. But then how you think about brand as a differentiator. And I don't think you could have, the timing is right. I said it at the very beginning. You came in and cleaned up your data. You had multiple companies that, you had to aggregate the data. And I recall you just saying how much of a mess it was, but there's two questions in there. Sorry. So one is, how did you approach AI and setting that up? And then we'll follow on with the brand conversation.
Okay, well, so like many CMOs, I started on the AI as a content accelerator journey, 3 or 4 years ago, when it was still early days, because I could see that in content was a problem that we had. We just didn't have enough content. We didn't, we had tried bringing in copywriters, but copywriters do everything serially. They want to be perfect. They want to own things end to end. Your volume of content ends up being so minimal. So like many CMOs, I started with the let's build some prompts that we can all share and like write a lot of copy. But that doesn't scale, Sydney, and that doesn't really turn into a force multiplier. It just makes things more consistent, a little faster. Like many people in tech, I'm like totally still addicted to Twitter. I don't call it X, but Twitter. And so I started reading about, AI on Twitter. I'd wake up on Saturday morning and, there was somebody that inspired me. And so I'd go play with stuff. And then you pulled me into a meeting with this really brilliant guy that showed me like an AI BDR. And I was like, okay, mind blown, mind open. How do I think about it?
It was Guillaume. Yeah.
It was G, exactly who it was. He's brilliant. And then I realized change is hard for people. Change where you're changing their job, you're changing their how, you're changing your business process. That's hard. And you can't always ask people to do that on top of the day jobs they're sprinting at. And so then I realized this is actually going to be a dedicated focus in a team. And I went hardcore and asked one of my VPs, can you take this on? Can you create a center of excellence? Can you take this on? Can you go hire dedicated AI ops people? And we did. And now we have our Manus board where all of our 80 something agents live. You can see the layers. Here's our intelligence layer. Here's our operations layer. Here's our content layer. Here's our what we call our revenue stack layer that we share with sales, where we have this is a tool that will go look at a customer's website and identify which of our products to match them to and manage the sales process around that. Here's our customer insights layer. Like here's our gong layer. Like we have all these layers, and then we have all the actions going with it. And I think what I did is I invited a lot of like training into the organization. I invited a lot of like try, fail, just culture. And then we just started systematizing things, and then we started telling people AI is not a choice, and we started interviewing for it, and we changed all of our job descriptions. We changed our career ladder to include AI capabilities and skill sets that are behavioral. We just been evolving that way. If you really want AI to be embedded, a leader has to take the actions to make it embedded, because it's a lot for people to do both the thinking change, the process change, the job change, everything, right? You need to like bring the process, the tools, the capabilities, but you also need to create the culture of experimentation, the culture of failure, the culture of, you know, in particular saying it's required, it's not a choice anymore.
As the organization looked at, were you the first in the organization to kind of lead this way? Do you think you're
Yeah,
leading AI transformation for the company?
100% leading AI transformation in the company, like even ahead of engineering. I remember having a conversation with our CTO, and he's like, "Oh, I learned about this tool called Cursor," and I was like, "What? Like, you can't really have just learned about that tool, right?" And it wasn't that many months ago, right? So yes, first in our company, I think really one of the first we're in a PE portfolio, so one of the first in our portfolio. So we get asked often to like lead and give examples. But I will say my company, we don't sit on our laurels. Everybody else is caught up, and I think we're doing great in many parts of the company now, and I'm actually very proud of how the company has just jumped on it, and proud of my peers for also realizing that there's no choice, it's path forward.
When you say everybody else is caught up, I mean, I'm surprised by that. I mean, I would assume you're continuing to push the ball forward.
Caught up more in like willingness to experiment, try bringing tools in. I would say we're still pretty, we're still pretty ahead, because every business process is an opportunity, right? So in terms of the number of our business processes, the number of places in our organization, and the kind of cultural leaning in, I'm still sure my team is ahead, but I really do believe the other organizations are catching up fast, because they didn't have to go through as much of an experimentation stage as we did without the tools. The company decided, for example, that everybody's going to get access to Claude, that we're going to, roll out MCPs, that we're doing all these things that I had to like be the pioneer and break ground on. Now that they just have access to those. Yeah.
14 months ago is when you started this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Well,
remember.
we
Yeah,
started,
it's crazy.
we started with, chat GPT and like content GPTs probably in 2023, but we're now really, we're very leaned in. Yeah. I have three full-time AI ops folks in the team. One of my VPs has it as a secondary job. We gave him the title of AI, marketing AI. Like we're very serious about it.
What else have you done organizationally to make this work? I think that's a question that every CMO is thinking about. Like,
I think, John, that's an ever-changing question. Like I would say, if you would have asked me that 3 months ago, it's different than what I'm saying now. Like last year, organizationally, we had brought in, a new dedicated content team and a new dedicated this and that team. And now I'm starting to tell my leaders, I'm sorry, guys, but you got to kind of go back old school and be way more vertically integrated. Because the thing that actually drags you down is the organizational lag and handoff between teams. That's where things slow down. And for us, the other thing that slowed us down was Asana. Asana was killing us, right? A tool that should be there to accelerate you was actually really slowing us down, because we had all these old school steps and processes in there that suddenly AI could skip half of that, and a single person could do things that used to be handed off across 3 or 4 teams. But they still felt like they had to hand it off because that was the job description. So we're still breaking that. We're still breaking teams. We're still reorganizing. I think we're going to be in constant reorganization over the next handful of months as we understand how the new workflow consolidates work back to more generalist roles than all the specialist roles we had 6 months ago.
I remember when you were talking about your content and blog strategy and where you were designing humans in the loop, you've talked about this idea of following the sun in an AI scaled execution model.
Yep.
Could you explain what that means to you? And then how do you think about human in the loop or human in the lead, which we've talked about now?
Well, follow the sun for us means that about half of our marketing team, FTE employees, sit in India. So our AI ops team is in India, our marketing automation team is India, our content marketing team is in India, our design team is in India, and even some of our campaign teams in India. And it's a real accelerator for us because we can hire really expert, talented marketers, like really expert and talented marketers that can, flesh out our team from a capability standpoint. And also we can just use the follow the sun model. Work gets done. I get up in the morning and I'm looking at, can you approve these 6 things? Not, can we start this project for today? Right? Because that work has been conceptualized yesterday and finished today because it got finished in India overnight, right? And AI helps that because they have complete trained AIs on our brand, our campaigns, our gong calls. They can, literally take major pieces of work and move them forward overnight.
So let's finish this up, Wendy, by talking a little bit about metrics. I think, marketing in the age of AI, when AI can disintermediate our content and our emails and all the traditional things, I think most CMOs are thinking it is about brand, because we have to be on the short list. Otherwise, we're not even going to get through. Yeah. How are you thinking about evolving not just your marketing, but your metrics and how you communicate your metrics to the board? When some of this stuff is inherently just a little bit harder to measure.
We actually just had this discussion at my last board meeting a few weeks ago. I kicked off the board meeting by telling the board that I was instituting a new brand measure for the company that was made up of what I considered probably to be the leading indicators of brand in the market and things that I could not measure before that I was measuring now because I had used AI to start doing that. So brand sentiment out in Reddit and on G2, like not just scores, but sentiment, right? Like, how do I think that is changing? And then traditional leading indicators of like direct reference traffic to the site, direct referral traffic to the site versus people finding us through SEO. Like you can start to watch that change, right? If people are finding your brand and they're literally going and typing it in or because they read something about you, et cetera. And then also interesting for us, like there isn't a huge amount of press in our space, but I would say when I was first a CMO 15 years ago, PR was incredibly important. We had a dedicated PR agency. It was all about that earned media. And then there was a trough where that all went away because everybody was self-publishing. And lo and behold, 2026 PR is like one of my top things again. How can I get authoritative earned media in my industry and outside my industry because it's a leading source of content for the LLM. So digital PR and brand and the brand experience, the human part of the brand experience is like suddenly incredibly important again. So I have a whole new brand matrix that's made up of, things I can learn from AI, like sentiment, things I can score, which is like AI visibility, all the things that probably a board had never heard about. They loved it because they knew that we were thinking differently about how we showed up in the AI age. And I think that's good. I think that's good for all of us.
Once again, being the lead in the PE portfolio, congratulations.
Probably.
For sure. And are you including citation in that as well?
Oh yeah.
Like citation, share of citation influence. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I told you it was going to go fast and it has, and we've gone deep in your leadership strategy and AI, measurement, brand, but we like to end going back to you and some fun things. So we already heard a fun fact on your intro, I will admit, but what is your passion outside of work?
Sydney knows the answer to this already. And she's given me a package of seeds to plant in my garden, which are blooming out there right now, Sydney. I never knew the name of a plant, how to plant, anything like that. And then 5 years ago, I moved to California and suddenly discovered that I have an absolute deep passion for the environment and creating a pollinator and native insect and animal, mostly bird friendly environment. So I've gone on a 5-year journey to completely transform my yard into a California native garden and a pollinator friendly garden. And I spend equally number of hours out there. I'm out there every single day. Every break I get, I go out and garden. It's 8:30 when the sun goes down, you find me still out in the garden, and I'm out there every weekend. It is my absolute joy.
Isn't it amazing the energy you get? I mean, I think, as we continue to, we have a tough job and we give a lot. I think we have to be more mindful now of our environment and where we gain energy. And I know that for you is that, and cooking and taking care of and entertaining. So we do share both of those things in common.
I love all of it. Yes.
And the last question we have is really around sharing gratitude. We know we wouldn't be able to be where we are without the mentorship of others, the support of others. And so this is the opportunity for you to shout out or give gratitude to a few people that have helped you get where you are.
I think I will give gratitude to Matt Hines. Matt, when I first became a CMO, was somebody I sat down with and said, how do you do this? That was in 2012. And fast forward, the CMO Coffee Talk community and all the people that I've met through that have touched my heart, including you, Sydney, that are the people I trust for advice on career and personal, and who have given me inspiration to learn and grow and, continually be curious.
Yes. Well, Wendy, every time I talk to you, I learn about work and life, which is so enlightening. And I cherish you and our friendship so much. Congratulations on being one of the top 100 B2B CMOs. You absolutely earned it. You are a force in our industry, in our community. You're not afraid to take on big, gnarly challenges too, I would say. Like when I hear about some of the things that you're tackling, it's not for the faint of heart. And so I just want to say congratulations and thank you. If you liked what you've heard today on the B2B CMO podcast, we encourage you to follow along. There are more podcasts coming. We also can be found at the b2bcmoproject.com, where we have primary research that we're continuing to build out and share, like hopefully the metrics that Wendy just shared. So we hope that everybody has a pleasant day. Thank you again, Wendy. Thank you to my co-host, John Miller, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the B2B CMO podcast. Head on over to b2bcmoproject.com for more episodes, plus the latest research and frameworks CMOs need, not just to survive, but actually thrive as AI and the new playbook reshape how we go to market. And if this episode sparks something for you, please follow the show, leave a rating, and share it with a marketing leader who could use a little inspiration. Special thanks to our wonderful partners, OneMind, 2X, Check, Demandbase, G2, Goldcast, LinkedIn, Fave, Sendoso, and Webflow for making this podcast possible. Until next time, be safe out there.